Have to say, the tentacle monster's plan is indeed good. When fighting Chu Mu before, he found that he had no choice but to do anything to Chu Mu. After making the decision to sacrifice himself, he immediately thought of such a plan. The tentacle monster can definitely be called a wise man. Definitely, the key to the success of this plan is that everything needs to develop according to his plan. That is to say, Chu Mu will indeed be trapped to death by it in this sealed time, and together with it, he will become a victim of the attack of the cosmic consciousness of the Marvel Universe. However, will things really develop as the tentacle monster predicts? True. Chu Mu's strength is indeed unable to withstand the cosmic consciousness check of the Marvel Universe. If he is really attacked indiscriminately, he will indeed perish along with the tentacle monsters. However, this kind of ending is a tragedy that will only happen when Chu Mu cannot escape this sealed time. The premise of everything. It must be that this space and time can really trap Chu Mu. Maybe the tentacle monster felt that Chu Mu didn't have the ability to escape, but from Chu Mu's perspective, he didn't quite agree with the tentacle monster's blind confidence. Want to drag me to death together? Wishful thinking about the tentacle monster. Chu Mu thought for a moment. I also roughly understand what this guy's idea is. It's nothing more than to die together. It's really clever to think of using the cosmic consciousness of the Marvel Universe. But, Chu Mu felt for a moment that this locked time indeed had the power to trap him in it. But, it is not difficult for Chu Mu to break free. It can only be said that the tentacle monster obviously underestimated Chu Mu's strength and background. No way. Even if the tentacle monster comes from an ancient and secret regional god, how could it possibly imagine that Chu Mu has more than one dimensional world? Each dimensional world can be regarded as an energy source, and 1 plus 1 is definitely not just equal to 2, not to mention that Chu Mu also has many identities given by the Almighty Eye. Raven teleportation seems to be inseparable from this area. However, my billions of glorious wings can take me directly out of this locked time at any time. It is not easy to use the billions of shining wings that can travel through time and space, and even travel through different parallel universes, to escape from the sealed time reinforced by this dimensional projection. Even if a real dimension comes to cover reality, billions of radiant wings can still take Chu Mu away, let alone just 10-dimensional projections. Billions of radiant wings are the variables that are beyond the imagination of the tentacle monster. Because of this, Chu Mu could leave at any time, so he naturally didn't panic at all. Instead, he admired the scenery of the old era along the stone road of time. Don't even say it. The unique scenery that history has given to this area, just like those cities during World War E, has a sense of freshness like a tourist attraction for Forbidden Shepherd. Those buildings that belong exclusively to this era, and the clothing that uniquely belongs to this era, all carry the unique charm of human civilization in different periods. It's not like worshipping foreigners. Although Chu Mu is a dragon countryer at heart, this does not mean that he cannot appreciate the splendid crystallization of other civilizations. Each civilization has its own unique charm. Diversity is the basic characteristic of the world in the charm of human civilization. It is true that the civilization and history of the Dragon Kingdom are splendid and beautiful that cannot be ignored. But every civilization nurtured on the Earth also has its own uniqueness. Earth's history. Every civilization has a time when it dominates the direction of the world. And the sun never sets on the empire of the Industrial Revolution. It is the beginning of a new era. It carries the unique significance of human civilization moving in another direction. Therefore, in this era, the empire on which the sun never sets has the most dazzling scenery of its time. At this point, it is not only reflected in the huge machinery of industrial development, but also reflected in all aspects of the entire country, ranging from food, clothing, housing and transportation to the spirit of every citizen of the empire on which the sun never sets. Such a sight. And the previous era. The situation was similar when the Dragon Kingdom stood on top of the world in ancient times. If Dragon Kingdom can reach its peak again in the future, it may bloom into an even more splendid scenery. I would like to thank you for allowing me to experience this kind of customs. Chu Mu's eyes filled with golden light filled this time and space, staring at the touch beyond time. Damn. You should feel fear. Don't you know what you are about to face? The tentacle monster obviously didn't like Chu Mu's calm reaction. It cannot be understood. Why could Chu Mu be as relaxed as traveling to relax in the face of such a certain death situation? Looking at Chu Mu's reaction, it felt a little uncomfortable and at the same time extremely angry. What it wants to see is Chu Mu being shocked, and then trying his best to escape the despair, so that it can feel some relief when its life is about to come to an end. Well, although a dimension has been projected here, you are not really out of my universe, so. The checking and killing of the cosmic consciousness is not easy, right? Chu Mu still had an unhurried tone. His words. It definitely counts as touching the painful feet of the tentacle monster. Indeed, it is now suffering unprecedented oppression. As long as the dimensional projection dissipates, it will be directly obliterated by the cosmic consciousness of the Marvel Universe. You'd better worry about yourself. Angry. Angry as never before. Along with this sound echoed between heaven and earth. The originally cloudless and very calm weather began to blow with howling winds, and the sunny sky seemed to have been splashed with ink in just a few seconds. It immediately became as scarlet as if it was covered in blood. The style of the entire scene has changed drastically. The refreshing pastoral scenery since childhood has become extremely Cthulhu-like. It turned into the scene of a horror movie in 1 second. A thick red liquid was constantly dripping in the sky, with a fishy stench and the unique smell of sulfur. The earth and buildings began to erode. It was such a scene that seemed like the end of the world, but it was very strange and did not cause any reaction from anyone on the ground. Those people who were cooking in brick houses, or farming and walking, at the moment, all it was as if he didn't notice anything unusual at all. They are still going about their normal lives. Although these people have expressions on their faces. There are also interactions with other people in each house. However, they live a lifelike life, but they seem to be incompatible with the weird scenes. What kind of person would live an unchanging life when the end seems to be approaching? This feeling is very strange. It seems as if the changes in the world have nothing to do with them. They can't see or hear. The people around me acted as if they were puppets being manipulated. Even though the scarlet liquid corroded their skin and corroded their exposed flesh and bones, these people did not react at all. The creepy sense of fragmentation is stronger than any horror movie. This can probably be regarded as an uncanny valley effect. When seemingly normal people react beyond normal, it can make people subconsciously feel uncomfortable and creepy. According to normal conditions, faced with sudden changes like a terrifying natural disaster, people should be wailing, praying, crying, screaming, and running away. However, even when the sewage was corroded into the ground, the expressions of those around them did not change at all. Watch it all. Chu Mu just frowned slightly, but did not show any incredulous expression. How to say? This is actually what Chu Mu expected. After all, this is not the real world, it's just a sealed time. And that's what the sealed time is like. People appear to be alive. In fact, it is not much different from The Walking Dead. The life they are going on is, to a certain extent, a preset script. There may be some changes, but all changes are actually destined. It's like a game. The NPCs inside seem to be very vivid. However, all responses they can make must be based on relevant information in the database, and they will never take any action beyond what is recorded in the database. That's what's happening today. Even the entire sky and earth have been made extremely terrifying by the tentacle monsters. But for these people living in sealed time, the time they have does not respond to this change, so they are unable to detect this change and cannot respond accordingly after this change occurs. Still living their seemingly normal lives. This is a little boring. Chu Mu curled her lips in boredom. It was like reading a novel. She originally had a strong sense of immersion, but suddenly she was completely deprived of any sense of immersion by the author's harsh words. A typical experience is that when reading historical novels, the ancient indigenous people kept saying, Ju Ju Zi, or something like that. This is my favorite era, and I can understand your appreciation for it, but do you think you can still break free from this period? Strange God. The tentacle monster's voice echoed in the sky. Suddenly, there was a thunder in the scarlet sky. Vaguely, countless huge black tentacles rolled in the scarlet night. Immediately afterwards, they gathered quickly again. It seemed to have turned into a black lake. The black-red liquid began to slide down from the sky, like a waterfall, and quickly formed a human shape on the ground. When the liquid solidified, a young man who might be considered handsome appeared. How to say? The reason why I use the adjective maybe. It's entirely because this young man has an absolutely handsome face, but the beards around his mouth are actually tiny tentacles. This seems a bit weird. Coupled with his scarlet eyes and pale skin, even a drunkard can probably tell that this guy is definitely not a normal human being. So, you looked like this before you were corrupted. Chu Mu raised his eyebrows and looked at the handsome man not far away. He knew it was a tentacle monster and couldn't help but enter this time and space. Guess. You want to test Chu Mu's other trump cards, right? The purpose of the tentacle monster is indeed to test what Chu Mu has to rely on, and to show that it is able to face a situation that it thinks is a fatal situation. Can't figure this out. The tentacle monster just feels uneasy outside the sealed time. Once it cannot maintain the dimensional projection, what if Chu Mu really finds some way to avoid the inevitable end? Then wouldn't it be sacrificed in vain? Even if its own body becomes a new god and it is resurrected in the future, it will still be laughed at by other beings at the same latitude until the end of time. Think of this. The tentacle monster couldn't help but enter this sealed time. Human skin makes me sick, tentacle monster. No, now he should be called a seemingly handsome man. His face was extremely cold. As he waved his hand, countless scarlet tentacles squeezed out from the surrounding space and twitched toward where Chu Mu was standing. This is all because of that damn god who restricted us. A form that can be used when walking in the human world. This sounds like a complaint. Human beings are God's most perfect creation in most of the universe. It certainly makes sense to receive some favoritism. It's just that the Mephistos from hell also hate God's preference. Just like Lucifer's rebellion is because God is very partial to humans. Shuheshua. Since the purpose is to test Chu Mu's other trump cards, it is natural to put pressure on Chu Mu and let Chu Mu reveal the reason why he is so confident and calm under forced circumstances. Therefore, as soon as he came up, he launched his exploits against Chu Mu. As the handsome man controlled the tentacles to attack Chu Mu shook his head slightly. Dimensional projection may have enhanced your power, but do you think that with just this enhancement, you can make up for the gap between you and me? I actually prefer your plan to trap me to death. Chu Mu's body bloomed with brilliance, and his divine power was converted into the power of holy light through the gate of heaven on the back of his hand. Haha. In my world, only I can control the extraordinary. The handsome man's words were like turning on some kind of switch. It's like an oracle for this dimensional world. In an instant, Chu Mu felt that the power of a certain law began to affect him, and the flow of divine power in his body began to slow down uncontrollably. The holy light sword that had been converted suddenly turned into a file size like a dagger. That's kind of interesting. Chu Mu was not disturbed either. His eyes flickered a few times. And just when he was about to forcibly break the blockade of this law's power and restore the flow speed of his divine power, the back of his hand suddenly shook a few times. A long-lost shock. It has not been long since he got the Heaven's Gate tattoo, but Chu Mu is also very familiar with this kind of vibration. After all, he has been harassed by this kind of vibration before. That is, the mysterious little girl inside the door of heaven is knocking on the door. Dong dong dong. Chu Mu's judgment was not wrong. One after another. The same vibration came from the back of his hand. Not only that, the little girl's voice rang again, with an indescribable excitement. Open the door. Open the door. I'll help you fight. I fight with thieves and kill them fiercely. The little girl's voice is very childish. Her excited tone was just like what a normal little girl would do when she was going to play in the Disney mud park. However, this is a battle with Mephisto, a mysterious and ancient dimension of unknown origin. Although it is just a duplication of Mephisto from one dimension, it is not a good thing after all. The little girl can be so excited to want to come out. The fight made Chu Mu slightly stunned. Believe me, we are all fierce. I promise to beat the shit out of it. How about you just let me go out and do some exercise? I promise I'll come back after the fight. The little girl's voice constantly came from the gates of heaven. Good guy. Using the most innocent childish voice to say such violent words, and trying to trick Chu Mu into relenting and letting her out, the little girl in Heaven's Gate could tell from her voice that she really wanted to come out. Maybe it's because he was imprisoned for a long time? Anyway. Facing the prayer of the little girl's voice, Chu Mu did not waver in his heart. First of all, he was completely able to cope with Junyi Man's duplication of Mephisto from this dimension. The so-called power law carried by the projection of the dimensional world is nothing. Something that makes him feel uncomfortable. Secondly, he didn't believe what the little girl said at all. What kind of person will go back after a fight? Do you really think I will treat you as a real little girl? No need to bet. Chu Mu is very sure that as long as this door is opened, the voice of the little girl inside will never come back. The situation at Heaven's Gate is a little weird. Chu Mu is not going to take the risk of releasing an unknown factor. It would be bad if a really big crisis arises. Chu Mu was a fan of American comics before she traveled through time. Therefore, she also knew many very powerful villains. She liked to pretend to be harmless humans and animals to attract others to make huge mistakes. The little girl's voice can penetrate the door of heaven. It is not a simple situation. If the angel inside is really revived, why is there only this little girl's voice knocking on the door and calling? The girl's voice is the 10th resurrected existence at the gate of heaven. This first resuscitated identity originally showed that the little girl's identity was not simple. Chu-Mu was also constantly guessing in his mind whether the little girl's voice belonged to a high-ranking existence in heaven. However, he was able to identify the identity of the little girl. But I couldn't find any. Definitely. It's also possible that the little girl's voice is disguised, but the angel in it is actually another image commonly used. After all, angel strictly speaking has no personality distinction. Is he one of the great angels in heaven? Chu-Mu knows that if the paradise behind this door is really the paradise of the DC universe, then his level single universe strength is really not guaranteed to compete with the big angel among them. I am afraid that some angels at the level of life could push him to the ground and rub him. Therefore, Chu-Mu also firmly believed that he should never be seduced by the sound of the flute opposite the gate of heaven. Soft-hearted? A surge of kindness. I don't need your help. I can handle the current situation on my own. Although Chu-Mu didn't open the door, she still responded to the little girl's voice in the gate of heaven. No way. If you don't give any response. He didn't want to have to endure the little girl's persistent knocking on the door. Face Chu-Mu's response. The little girl's voice was noticeably silent for a moment. How stingy. I also lent you my power here. Can't you let me out for some air? In a series of words. You can clearly feel the angry and depressed mood in the little girl's voice. Among these complaints, a piece of news was revealed, that is, Chu-Mu can perfectly use the gate of heaven as a converter. In fact, the little girl's voice also played a certain role. Using the power of heaven's gate requires her permission. This is really not an insignificant news, Chu-Mu thought deeply. Although it is still unclear what the identity of the little girl's voice is, it can be judged that at least the little girl's voice is at the gate of heaven. The heaven behind does have great authority. I guess her status is also very important. I quite agree with Angel's status. Maybe I can try to communicate with her in more clichés when I have free time in the future. It's a good idea. But Chu-Mu does not rule out the possibility that what the little girl said is false. After all, no one knows how many years the little girl behind the gate of heaven has lived. Old guys, old monsters, etc. are all insidious and ruthless. In comparison, Chu-Mu, who has lived for 2 generations, is just a young man in his 20s. Compared with intrigues and insidious operations, he is very I know that I am definitely not as good as the old monster who has lived for many years. Can only say. There may be both risks and rewards. Definitely, this must be considered after returning to the future time and space. He has sensed that his return is not far away. The billions of glorious wings are about to break through the barrier of the universe and open the door to leave the universe for a short time. He will not choose to stay in this time and space for any longer. After all, the cosmic barrier broken by billions of radiant wings cannot always remain open. In fact, this broken door will only last for a short period of time, and then it will be repaired by the self-healing ability of the Marvel Universe. If you want to go out again, you need to open a new gap. How to say? This is not because the ability of billions of glory wings is not good, but because the Marvel Universe belongs to a very high-level universe, which can make Mephisto's coveted in countless dimensions, which is evident from its level. And in many dimensions, Mephisto does not have the ability to break through the cosmic barrier in the Marvel Universe. It is already a very buggy situation for billions of shining wings to be able to break through the cosmic barrier. Chu-Mu's strength is only level single universe. The cosmic barrier broken by the billions of radiant wings not only allows Chu-Mu to travel through time, but also allows Chu-Mu to travel to other universes. Definitely, without specific coordinates, randomly traveling through the universe is the same as an act that seeks death. Chu-Mu, who has always been cautious, will naturally not do such reckless things. He just wants to go outside the universe to relock the time coordinates and return to his own universe. It's time to deal with this problem of yours. The divine power in Chu-Mu's body surged, and the law that hindered the flow of his divine power suddenly collapsed, and the divine power in the body resumed its unobstructed flow. Just like destroying all the iron chains tied to the body, the material of this iron chain is still the Pinshishi version, which puts no pressure on the forbidden animal at all. Billions of glorious wings are about to break through the cosmic barrier. Chu-Mu naturally had no intention of continuing to fight with this tentacle monster. He probably had a dimensional coordinate as to where the tentacle monster came from. In the future, you only need to search in detail for the location of the coordinates of this dimension, and you will be able to find which dimension Mephisto in the universe the tentacle monster's body is. So, Now the duplication in front of Chu Mu has lost its use value. How can you let me out? The little girl's voice behind the gate of heaven continued to mutter. Although the little girl complained a lot, it did not interfere with Chu Mu's use of Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate still continued to convert sources of divine power to Chu Mu. Whenever, I am confident that I can challenge you all to heaven alone. Maybe I will consider opening the door for you. Chu Mu made a rare joke to the little girl behind the door of heaven. However, but the little girl's voice behind Heaven's Gate seemed unable to tell that it was a joke. Then I don't know how long it will take. The little girl muttered in an extremely depressed voice, but did not continue to knock on the door of heaven, as if 10 people had gone to a corner and got sulky. Chu Mu didn't pay attention to what the little girl's voice was doing when he didn't knock on the door. He raised the holy light in his hand and looked at the handsome man not far away. The sacred power that is constantly transformed also blooms brilliantly on Chu Mu. It is definitely a million-level special effect, as if his body is burning with golden flames. Damn it. You actually dare to use the power of heaven to crush my law. That is my heaven. After the handsome man felt that Chu Mu was free from the influence of the power of law, his entire pale face became extremely vicious. He became ferocious, his tone full of annoyance. Cursing with such gritted teeth, it was as if he had regarded heaven as his own back garden, and Chu Mu was the thief who dared to steal his private property. Regarding the conversation between Chu Mu and the angel behind the gate of heaven, this hellish god duplication obviously didn't hear his angry roar, and the beard on his face was constantly flexing his teeth. In space, those scarlet tentacles attacked Chu Mu even more violently. However, this time, Chu Mu did not passively defend the dog like before. Since there is no need to delay analyzing this guy's power, Chu Mu is not a masochist. He doesn't like the scene of a lot of tentacles waving around him. That feeling. It's like watching some dark Bible anime. It's quite disgusting. Because of this, Chu Mu was waving the holy sword to cut off the surrounding scarlet tentacles, and his eyes also lit up with a bright golden luster. The divine fire rays were also rendered after being converted by the divine power of the gate of heaven. Divine attributes. And this sacred attribute is the biggest nemesis to the gods on the hell side. How do you say that? If the tentacle monster's body is here, this control may not have any effect. After all, there is definitely a big gap between the life of level single universe and that ancient dimension Mephisto. But who knows that what is here is just a duplication of Mephisto from one dimension, and it is also the kind of duplication with residual health. Just feeling the fluctuations of the divine fire rays in Chu Mu's eyes makes the handsome man's emotions fluctuate strongly, and his heart is undulating like waves. Extremely heavy pressure. Fear flashed several times in the handsome man's eyes. But when you think that you are already dead and will die soon, then what is there to be afraid of? The most important thing is to test out the trump card of the strange god in front of you. Otherwise, sacrificing yourself in vain is not a good ending. Damn guy. The handsome man roared again, wanting to mobilize the power of the entire dimensional projection to suppress Chu Mu earlier, and then see what other trump cards Chu Mu had. Let me see. Why are you so confident and calm? Do you think you can escape from this time and space? Do you think you have the ability to fight me? Ignorant and weak god. You have no idea what you are facing. The handsome man yelled at Chu Mu, and scarlet bloomed in the surrounding space. During the entire sealed time, everything is being destroyed. There is no way to go back anyway. Naturally, a handsome man will not continue to care about the integrity of this time. Just a souvenir. How can it compare with the authority of God that I will dedicate to my body in the future? As long as my body is promoted to a new god, I can have as many worlds as I want in the future. The power of the Creator. Just thinking about it makes the handsome man extremely excited. Want to see what I'm capable of? Okay, then as you wish. Chu Mu not only eliminated the large scarlet tentacles around him, but as his words fell, his eyes suddenly bloomed with a more brilliant light. The golden light shines on the entire time, as if to dispel all the darkness, and the extremely hot rays sweep away in all directions with sacred attributes. All of a sudden, countless exquisite brick buildings were shattered and scattered. The human beings living in it were all burned to ashes. They are things that should no longer exist, and the power that supports their existence is the handsome man, the power king of the dimensional projection possessed by the tentacle monster. In front of Chu Mu's divine fire rays rendered with divine attributes, whether it is glass bricks, gravel metal, tall buildings, machines parked in the fields, or people in various places, under this scarlet ray, everything can only be reduced to ashes. Countless buildings and human beings were destroyed and turned into dust and debris scattered all over the sky, The entire sealed time was like a mirror with cracks constantly appearing. Damn strange God. This is supposed to be my power. The handsome man watched the surrounding environment collapse, his face began to twist slightly, and he was extremely annoyed. However, because his remaining power was limited, he could not stop Chu Mu from crushing this piece of time. Indeed, this for a moment, the tentacle monster realized that he seemed to have really underestimated the strength of the guy in front of him. Other side. It seems that he is very proficient in using the power of heaven. This is something that is unlikely. How can the other party control such a huge power of heaven? The tentacle monster was in disbelief, but he still did not forget his purpose. He must trap Chu Mu tightly in this dimensional projection. Only when the cosmic consciousness of the Marvel Universe kills him can the other party be able to fight with him. Together we take on the responsibility of the entire universe. Even if you can use the power of heaven, I can still trap you to death. The handsome man roared ferociously, and his whole body suddenly turned into a pool of black ink. He blended into the surrounding environment that had transformed into purgatory again. The handsome man, also known as the tentacle monster, completely integrated himself into the space of dimensional projection in order to strengthen the power of this dimensional projection. No way. Feeling that Chu Mu was able to use the power of heaven in an unreasonable way without any backlash or resistance, the handsome man also knew that Chu Mu really had some confidence. The power of heaven naturally restrains lives of their nature, so in order to ensure nothing goes wrong, he can only try his best to use his last bit of strength to trap Chu Mu to death again. At the moment, the handsome man no longer cares to think about why Chu Mu can use the power of heaven at no cost. Able to trap Chu Mu to death. Letting Chu Mu die with him and turning the gate of heaven into an ownerless thing is the most and only thing that the handsome man cares about now. Because of this, he also spent all his original power and blessed it on his own dimensional projection, and the entire dimensional projection suddenly became much more solid. The barriers to dimensional projection have also become extremely hard. Zizizi. The monstrous golden holy light bloomed in Chu Mu's eyes, sweeping through the entire purgatory like dimensional projection, covering the entire purgatory in a dazzling light. But, although this purgatory dimension was still destroyed beyond recognition by the power of the holy light, it was not directly destroyed like the previously sealed time. The handsome man is also the tentacle monster. The way he uses his own blessing to the entire dimension has indeed strengthened this dimension into a very hard cage. Even the holy light, which naturally restrains the power of hell, cannot break it. For this, Chu Mu was also slightly surprised in his heart. Definitely. He still didn't feel any panic or uneasiness. Using this simple and direct violent method to break out of prison was just because he thought he could relax and unwind. I usually have power, but I don't dare to use it easily, for fear of accidentally turning the fragile earth into ashes. But in this dimensional projection, he doesn't need to cover it up at all. Anything that happens here is like a mirror space and will not affect the real world. Even if Chu Mu destroys the entire projection dimension, nothing in the real world will be damaged. Being able to have this kind of decompression place where you can fully release your destructive desires is simply something you can only come across but cannot ask for. Chu Mu definitely wants to release her hands and feet here. It's so cool. Chu Mu's eyes released a torrent of holy light. Although he failed to break the surrounding space, he still had a very satisfied and happy smile on his face. If a reporter's camera can capture this scene and spread it on the internet, it is estimated that people in future time and space will be able to exclaim that this is a famous scene in Homelander. Some people may also think that Chu Mu is filming some plots of Black Robe 2 inches indeed. The smile on Chu Mu's face now is really similar to Homelander's Harmony smile. What stands out is the freedom to do whatever you want. Chu Mu is not worried at all about whether he can get out. Anyway, even if he cannot force a breakthrough, he can still use billions of glorious wings to leave. No matter how thick the barrier of this dimensional projection is, can it be thicker than the cosmic barrier of the Marvel Universe? Dimensional projection. It's just the power projected from a complete dimensional world. It can't even be compared with a complete dimension. Its barriers are naturally impossible to compare with the cosmic barriers of the Marvel Universe. Even if there are tentacle monsters who risk their lives to integrate into it, it is impossible to compare. Chu Mu can break through the cosmic barriers in the Marvel Universe with billions of radiant wings. Barriers such as this kind of dimensional projection are as easy as for the billions of radiant wings. Therefore, just use the billions of glorious wings. Chu Mu can easily leave this dimensional projection. No matter whether the handsome man, that is, the tentacle monster, has used its own origin to strengthen the barriers of the entire dimension, Even if it sacrifices dozens of tentacle monster-sized origins, the billions of glorious wings can easily leave with Chu Mu. Otherwise, why does Chu Mu think this is a bug-level ability? Such a trump card. You can leave at any time. Chu Mu definitely doesn't feel any pressure at all. He was swaying his fists and kicks to his heart's content in this dimensional projection. How can I put it? It will not be easy to encounter similar powers in the future. Boom. Zzzz. The rays surging out of Chu Mu's eyes made a deafening sound, mixed with the surrounding purgatory, which was constantly being destroyed, but the entire dimensional projection space was not a big deal. It's really solid. Even Chu Mu couldn't help but admire. Strictly speaking, the power he exerted was not an intensity that a dimensional projection could withstand, even without considering the inherent restraint of the divine attributes on the hell dimension. Even many smaller dimensions cannot withstand the full output of level single universe life. However, this dimensional projection of the tentacle monster stubbornly resisted Chu Mu's offensive, and there was still no crack in the entire dimensional barrier. The tentacle monster wants to trap Chu Mu to death, and he indeed has his own confidence. Definitely. For Chu Mu, the tentacle monster's confidence is not enough. If I don't have billions of radiant wings, it will be a bit difficult, but who can give me the supermodel's means of billions of radiant wings? Chu Mu was a little surprised by the solidity of the dimensional projection, but after a little perception and second thoughts, she understood what was going on. It's actually not hard to guess. The dimensional projection summoned with a body with residual blood should not have such a tough situation, but it is obviously different after the tentacle monster integrates its own origin. Although the cosmic barrier is not much different for billions of glory wings, in fact, the quality of the entire dimensional projection has definitely been significantly improved. Even if it is only a temporary improvement, it can definitely trap any level single universe being. To know. Although the realm world pulled out by the tentacle monster is just a projection of one dimension, compared to the real dimensional world, there are still differences between heaven and earth. But the original origin of the tentacle monster is not a simple one. It is an ancient and powerful dimensional Mephisto, a duplication created by tearing off its own soul. Therefore, his origin, that is the piece of broken soul. It represents the power of his body. Even if it is just a sporadic soul fragment like the tip of an iceberg, it still has the essence of the original soul and represents a level beyond the level single universe. If you want to use this power to strengthen the dimensional barrier and trap the life of a level single universe, it is absolutely foolproof under normal circumstances. Foolproof under normal circumstances. There is actually nothing wrong with the tentacle monster's plan. If Chu Mu is just an ordinary level single universe being, a god without a deep foundation, then he will definitely not be able to escape the cage built by the tentacle monster. In fact, just like ordinary beings are like ants in front of high-level beings, relying on a trace of the original soul of Mephisto, an ancient and powerful dimension, the tentacle monster should have the strength to kill level single universe easily. After all, in higher level beings the lives in the ordinary level single universe in front of us can still be regarded as ants. But who let the tentacle monster lose its health when encountering Chu Mu? Naturally, a big brother duplication, with limited health can no longer deal with a level single universe being like Chu Mu. The tentacle monster had already realized this when it was fighting against Chu Mu. It was too weak. It was so weak that it was still unable to kill a life that it once had no regard for, let alone the tentacle monster. I found out that something was wrong with Chu Mu. How can a normal level single universe life use the power of heaven so easily? You know, heaven is not a charity. To a certain extent. If you are not a life in heaven, if you want to use the power of heaven, the price you have to pay will definitely not be easier than using the power of hell without contact. Even so, the sacred power that life outside of heaven can control is also quite limited. How could it be possible for someone like Chu Mu to spray the sacred light everywhere as if it were a free thing? This strange god who was one step ahead of me, is there some unknown connection with heaven? Is it the reincarnation of some big angel? The thought of this possibility. The tentacle monster was even more determined to trap Chu Mu to death, so it integrated into the dimensional projection and used its own essence to be arranged on the entire dimensional projection. This way, even if Chu Mu is really the reincarnation of some big angel and has a high degree of compatibility with heaven, the tentacle monster firmly believes that Chu Mu cannot escape such a predicament. After all, level single universe. He is so insignificant in front of his own body. Even though he is just a soul fragment torn from his body, the weight of this soul fragment is enough to overwhelm any life in the level single universe. The tentacle monsters believe this. How to say? There is nothing wrong with the tentacle monster idea. But, is Chu Mu a simple level single universe being? Obviously not. Although Chu Mu aroused his divine power to the maximum power, and the converted sacred rays could not break through the space, he actually always had the retreat of billions of lights wings of glory. It's just that the tentacle monster doesn't know this. That's it. Try your best. Use all your trump cards. Then you will understand what despair is and how ignorant you are. You are just like an ant. How dare you provoke me? You will regret it. You will regret that you did not accept my little kindness when I gave it to you. In the dark background, the tentacle monster screamed crazily. His voice echoed in all directions. It's like there are subwoofers everywhere in the purgatory of the entire dimensional projection. Being bombarded with subwoofer sounds from all directions. Chu Mu plucked his ears with some dissatisfaction. The blazing light in his eyes did not disappear. The tentacle monster's words did not make him feel uneasy at all. On the contrary, it made him feel noisy. The tentacle monster didn't know that Chu Mu was just relaxing. Just like an office worker who had been bound by rules for too long on weekdays and occasionally came home to open Luodu and play wildly. He thought he was sure of victory, and Chu Mu would definitely be buried with him. And he himself will be resurrected by his true body in the future. The future is infinitely beautiful in the tentacle monster's outlook, and he will truly become an independent life in the future. I will remember you, really, your existence will be remembered by me. After all, in a sense, it was you who brought the lost paradise to me. If you weren't so annoying, maybe I would be willing to make you my slave. It's a pity that you gods always think too highly of yourself. Now. You will pay the price for your arrogance. No matter who you are, if you die with me, you will never have a chance to be reincarnated again. When the tentacle monster's voice echoed in the dimensional projection, its tone also contained a rampant tone that was difficult to conceal. He was really disgusted by bugs like Chu Mu, so he wanted to appreciate Chu Mu's desperate posture, and then in the process of humiliating Chu Mu, I enjoyed the moment of death with satisfaction. Waiting for his body to obtain the authority of God, he can be easily resurrected by the authority of God, and the strange and annoying God in front of him naturally does not have that chance. Being searched and killed by the cosmic consciousness of a universe, even the fragments of the soul cannot be left, and even the multi-universe level of power cannot even think of reversing such a demise. In other words, Chu Mu will never die again. Has anyone ever told you that you are really noisy? Can you please shut up your big, foul-smelling mouth? Chu Mu aimed directly at the sky and stirred up 2 divine fire rays, directly hitting the sky. This projection of purgatory, which was supposed to be extremely dark, shines brighter than the daytime on Earth. The terrifying sacred flames gathered in the sky and formed a cyclone, as if they were going to completely ignite the entire sky of purgatory. There was no darkness that could continue to hide in the entire land of purgatory. The momentum is very huge. If the scene were changed to the Marvel Universe, Chu Mu's full performance would definitely ignite the entire galaxy. But, although it was very powerful, it still failed to break through the space barrier of dimensional projection. Seeing this scene, the tentacle monster integrated into the dimensional projection laughed proudly again. Useless. No matter how hard you struggle, you can't escape from here. If you can let me trap you to death at the expense of your origin, you are proud of your humble life. The tentacle monster's voice sounded again. Immediately. The whole world seemed to have begun to flip, the earth and the sky were twisted together, and the screams of various souls were intertwined with the boundless curtain of darkness. The breath of darkness surged in this chaos, like a wave. Soon. Chu Mu's divine fire ray was directly swallowed up. Qian Li's, although there were countless wails and explosions, the tentacle monster didn't care at all. Anyway, when the consciousness of the universe takes action, the power in these projections will be destroyed. If we don't show it now, can it be regarded as a waste? Don't struggle. This is your destiny. The tentacle monster turned into a ferocious giant face in the chaotic space, and the sound resounded throughout the world, making Chu Mu feel as if it had been polluted by a kind of heavy metal music and felt uncomfortable in his ears. Have to say, in terms of harsh words, the tentacle monster definitely has something. It is obvious that the projection world of his own dimension has been destroyed by the power of Chu Mu without any feedback. There is always a dark power in Chu Mu with the sacred power. The divine fire rays with attributes were engulfed and annihilated. But, however, this tentacle monster can still be confident and calm, and speak nonsense to Chu Mu as if it has a winning attitude, as if Chu Mu's divine fire rays with sacred attributes are burning something other than his origin. You know, in the future after integrating itself into the entire dimensional projection world, the tentacle monster is equivalent to originally integrating into this dimensional projection world and replacing a part of this dimensional projection world. Chu Emu's divine fire rays with sacred attributes are destroying the darkness of this dimensional projection world. At the same time, the tentacle monsters integrated into this dimensional projection world will also feel the pain of being destroyed. But even so, suffering the pain of destroying the soul and annihilating the darkness, under Chu Emu's divine fire rays with sacred attributes, the tentacle monster was actually able to say that Chu Mu was left to die. This was Chu Emu's fate. Such understatement, I have to admire that the tentacle monster is really thick-skinned. With the power of the entire dimensional projection world, he pretended to compete with Chu Mu while being constantly eliminated, and regarded the ending of himself in Chu Mu as his own victory. Maybe this is also a way of spiritual comfort for the tentacle monster. Yes, after all, in the tentacle monster's mind, he can be resurrected by his own body in the future. Only, will things really develop as he expected, with Chu Mu becoming the one who will die with him and then fall into the tragedy of eternal sinking in the future? I have to admire your imagination. You are so self-righteous. You are worthy of being a demon from hell. You guys always like to enjoy yourself. Chu Mu also learned about a lot of hell in some secrets and books. Demon, at the same time, he also once faced the devil, the prince of hell. Can only say, the inner witch demon and the tentacle monster in front of him have very similar characteristics in terms of self-pleasure. It can be said that every demon is an arrogant and self-righteous being. Definitely. Although the witch heart demon likes to have fun, it is not as noisy as the tentacle monsters. The sounds made by the tentacle monsters from all directions are indeed pollution from heavy metal music. Just as annoying. It's like having billions of subwoofers bombarding you with noise at the same time. The tentacle monster is integrated into the entire dimensional projection, so his voice will pass through every space and constantly echo throughout the entire dimensional projection. Without any exaggeration, this kind of sound can probably be regarded as a means of attack. Even with the physical fitness of the Hulk, the original physical fitness of the Hulk alone cannot withstand such noise harassment. Even with the Hulk's physical fitness, his eardrums would be ruptured by the tentacle monster's voice every minute. Maybe Green Shang Hulk can withstand it only after he comes, but with Green Shang Hulk's temper, he will definitely not be as calm as Forbidden Animal Hulk is now. Even those who have the physiques of the gods have to cool down when they are slightly weaker. Well, yes, I am talking about the stunted god of mischief Loki in Giants of Jotunheim. The body of a magician is actually not weak, but magicians like Loki are definitely an exception. Just look at how weak his physical condition is when he was stabbed to death in the face of Thanos. And it is not incomprehensible for a mortal like Captain America Steve to explode on the spot. After all, when the sound reaches a certain decibel, it can be regarded as a weapon. The original voice of the tentacle monster had already reached the level of decibels that could directly shock a large number of people to death. Not to mention that now it incorporates dimensional projection, which is equivalent to putting a very exaggerated loudspeaker next to his mouth. Those who have not reached level Godfather will probably not feel that comfortable in such a sound environment. Definitely. Level single universe beings like Chu Mu will only feel that their ears are polluted and feel very noisy, but they will not suffer much substantial harm from this. Are you making your last struggle? Strange God. The way you look strong on the outside but strong on the inside really makes me happy. The tentacle monster's voice still echoed in the sky. His face was torn apart by Chu Emu's power again and again, and as he was being wiped out again and again, his power was visibly decreasing. Only, the tentacle monster, which was already determined to die, didn't care at all about this. I hate your disgusting voice. There was a look of disgust on Chu Emu's face, and the divine fire rays with sacred attributes in his eyes continued to spray out, directly smashing the dark shadows gathering in the sky. But, due to the tentacle monster's integration into the dimensional projection world, more darkness soon swept out, and once again gathered elsewhere to form the ferocious face of the tentacle monster. Hate the sound of my voice. The tentacle monster's ferocious face showed a bit of madness. I'm sorry to tell you that at the end of your life, only my voice can accompany you through the last time. The power of heaven cannot save you. No matter whether you are the reincarnation of the great angel or not, here, you will accompany me to the final chapter of destruction and demise. Obviously, the tentacle monsters are becoming more and more suspicious of Chu Emu's ability to use the power of heaven unscrupulously. Chu Mu may be the reincarnation of a great angel in heaven. Otherwise, how can beings in the level single universe use the power of heaven so unscrupulously? Even those level single universe angel warriors in heaven, even in the era when heaven was still glorious, could not borrow the power of heaven so endlessly. Only those great angels who best represent the authority of heaven, have deep connections with heaven, and are God's most perfect masterpieces have such unbridled authority. Because of this, as Chu Mu squandered the power of heaven for a long time, the tentacle monsters became more and more suspicious of Chu Mu's identity. If it weren't for the big angel, there would be no way to gain such favor from heaven. The guess that Chu Mu is the big angel can also explain why Chu Mu was able to find and take away the gate of heaven. You can wake up so quickly. Are you Gabriel, or Raphael? It's really a pity that I destroyed you. After my body takes over heaven, I will have one less general. But it doesn't matter. As long as I become the new god, I can create as many warriors as I want, ha 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 ha. Dark shadows continued to sweep across the sky, rising and falling violently like rough waves, and the tentacle monster's round face was looming among them. How to say? Even thinking about it there makes me so excited. This guy must know what YY is, have to say. In a short period of time, the tentacle monster has suffered many glorious sacrifices, and then was resurrected by the successful body, while Chu Mu can only sink into the scene of death forever. This kind of YY thinking. It is probably equivalent to the feeling of a hardworking social animal who, after feeling that he can complete his work to a super level, can win the favor of his boss as CEO, marry Bai Fumei, and reach the peak of his life. As a duplication, he has a certain understanding of the original body, with 100% loyalty and trust. I don't know why the tentacle monster thinks that after its body obtains the authority of God, it will definitely be resurrected through God's authority? Maybe it's because Mephistos are all honest people in the Hell Test dimension. They don't understand that sometimes if the credit is too great, the boss still has a way of dealing with the meritorious people like a people's entrepreneur? Anyway, the tentacle monster wanted to drag Chu Mu to death together. Facing Chu Mu's attack, he also chose to ignore it directly, and then kept talking to Chu Mu. Go on. Continue your meaningless struggle, you can't change your outcome. The noisy shouting of the tentacle monsters is really annoying. In Chu Mu's eyes, the divine fire rays carrying sacred attributes are becoming more and more intense. However, even if Chu Mu carries divine fire rays with sacred attributes, they can easily penetrate and disperse the darkness that covers the sky, but they will be like tarsal maggots, generally gathered in other places on the canopy. Reconstruct the tentacle monster's face as rampant as a villain's success. There is no way. No matter how powerful the power of Chu Mu's divine fire rays with sacred attributes is, it cannot completely cover the entire sky of the entire dimensional projection world. And before its own origin is obliterated and the barriers of the dimensional world are not broken down, the tentacle monster can rebuild itself anywhere in the entire dimensional projection. Chu Mu's divine fire rays with sacred attributes do a lot of damage to the tentacle monsters. Every time, the tentacle monsters can feel that their souls are trembling and wailing. But it is not a simple matter to destroy the origin of the tentacle monster that is integrated with the entire dimensional projection world. It cannot be destroyed as easily as in a normal battle. This is a bit like in fantasy novels, where one's origin is placed in the general operation of heaven. It is difficult to truly eliminate the tentacle monsters before the entire dimensional projection world is destroyed. If Chu Mu's current attack frequency were to be followed, it would probably take hundreds of years to destroy the entire world in the origin of the tentacle monsters with brute force. Can Chu Mu spend hundreds of years here fighting tentacle monsters? Obviously impossible. Not only is it impossible for Chu Mu to have that patience, the tentacle monster also knows that he will be completely locked by the cosmic consciousness of the Marvel Universe in half an hour at most. By that time, the tentacle monster starts to have sex again. For a projection of Mephisto who already has the intention to die, the pain he feels is nothing at all. It is not even afraid of death and destruction, but it doesn't care at all about Chu Mu's attacks again and again. Everyone is going to die together anyway, no matter how hard you try, it won't help. The key is, you will fall into eternal destruction, and I will eventually revive in the future. With such a belief, the tentacle monster can be said to be in pain and happiness. I could be miserable, but you just have to be worse off than me. I'm very happy. I don't know whether the tentacle monster's body has such sufficient humanity, or whether the tentacle monster has been active in the world for countless years and has acquired some humanity. It is not self-serving to harm others, but as long as the other party is worse than itself. I really like the situation where I feel comfortable. Chu Mu's eyes are like jets, constantly emitting rays that illuminate the entire dimensional projection world, and time and again stir up the dark that forms the face of the tentacle monster. It's useless. Ha ha ha. Desperate. Hurry. Let me enjoy your desperate roar. Another huge face of the tentacle monster gathered in the sky in a corner, and his rampant and proud laughter filled the purgatory space of the entire dimensional projection world. Chu Mu was also a little annoyed by this guy's talk, so he no longer planned to attack this dimension with divine fire rays carrying sacred attributes. Originally, he thought that the divine fire rays with sacred attributes had the power of heaven and could make tentacle monsters extremely painful. However, he did not expect that this guy had the same alphabetical attributes as Awakening. He screamed in pain and started mouthing excitedly, but Chu Mu was so disgusted. No more beeping for you, the words fell. Behind Chu Mu is the rhythm of countless laws. The extremely mysterious law pattern began to slowly emerge on Chu Mu's back, and then wings made of energy formed on Chu Mu's back. Platinum wings. It looks like countless tentacles made of billions of rays of light, and the movement of these tentacles' teeth and claws forms a shape similar to wings. Billions of glorious wings. The representative of Chu Mu divinity. They are constantly fluttering behind Chu Mu, exuding a majestic and sacred light, with extremely overbearing law fluctuations that seem to be able to destroy everything. The space is shaking. Billions of lights are shining. It seems that Chu Mu can purify all the unruly people in the world. Damn it. What kind of power do you have? Above the sky. The tentacle monster's face showed a look of uncertainty, and his tone was also full of incredible shock, as if he had a great reaction to Chu Mu's billions of glorious wings. How to say? Although the tentacle monster did not analyze the properties of Chu Mu's billions of radiant wings, it also felt that its dimensional projection began to become extremely unstable after the appearance of these billions of radiant wings. This was what made him feel a little frightened. They have all integrated into their own origins, the soul fragments from the ontology. This dimensional projection space should be indestructible and unbreakable. Why did the pair of wings become unstable immediately after they appeared? Could it be that the divine fire ray carrying the sacred attribute just now was not the trump card of the guy in front of me? Are these weird wings? No. You can't escape this purgatory. My origin comes from the great king of hell. How can you, a humble god, have the power to rival my origin? The tentacle monster roared extremely uneasily, as if it was using this roar to increase its confidence. It immediately mobilized the power emperor of the entire projection dimension and swept towards Chu Mu. Endless darkness. Seeping out from the purgatory dimension. Like rough seawater, huge amounts of waves were set off. Darkness like a tsunami. A wave of darkness hundreds of thousands of kilometers high was set off, roaring towards Chu Mu from all directions, as if it was going to completely submerge Chu Mu in it. The tentacle monster has tried its best to mobilize all the power of the entire dimension. At this time, it can be seen that the tentacle monster is really panicked by the appearance of billions of glorious wings. If Chu Mu is allowed to escape, I dare not think about it. I dare not think about it. The tentacle monster will never allow such a failure. He knows that he must obliterate himself when the consciousness of the universe outside. Chu Mu was trapped here, so even if it was only a short suppression, he would have to completely engulf Chu Mu in the boundless darkness. You can only be buried with me. There's no way I'm going to let you escape. The roar of the tentacle monster echoed in the boundless darkness. A wave of terror. It roared towards Chu Mu with a power that seemed to be overwhelming. However, in the face of this massive attack, Chu Mu stood still and did not take any action. A seemingly scary attack. In Chu Mu's eyes shining with divine luster. The judgment was made with great clarity. How to say? Just a paper tiger. This is far from reaching my limit. Chu Mu whispered. The gates of heaven tattoo on the back of my hand begins to shine. The surging divine power passed through it and was then converted into sacred gold, like flowing water, dyeing the billions of glorious wings behind him with a golden luster. Rising brilliance. Shining throughout the dark dimension. Chu Mu is rendered like an angel descending into the mortal world. In this state, Chu Mu can purify all negative states of oneself. And any karma and curse infection cannot harm Chu Mu. Naturally, including the attack of the tentacle monster, there is no way to reach Chu Mu. In such a state, the holy light can be regarded as putting on another layer of armor for the billions of glorious wings. Put on a shell, made in heaven, all evil is naturally restrained in the face of this power. Particles exuding a holy aura fell from Chu Mu's billions of wings of light that were constantly fluttering. After these light particles contaminated the land of purgatory, they burned the land of purgatory into a burnt golden color, just like that. Like encountering sulfuric acid, the earth and sky are constantly melting. It seems you can't stand it anymore. The golden holy light continued to flow on the wings, and the light easily broke through all the darkness that swept in, completely isolating all filthy things from his body. No matter how the darkness controlled by the tentacle monster surges, the wave formed by the darkness cannot reach the area where Chu Mu is standing. Not only did it fail to break through the light emitted by the billions of glorious wings, but it was riddled with holes by the power of the holy light. In the dark, the tentacle monster roared in agony. No. Impossible. How can you have such rights? Why does the power of the holy light cooperate with you so much? How can it integrate with other forces? The power of heaven has always been overbearing. Why is it actively cooperating with you? How is this possible? Damn guy. Where are you from? In the expelled darkness. The tentacle monster discovered something was wrong, and his roar could not conceal the terrifying fear, as if he had discovered something extremely terrifying. The two forces integrate together. This is not really something worth fussing over, the duplication of an ancient Mephisto. But if one of these powers belongs to the power of heaven, then the situation will naturally be completely different. Who doesn't know how domineering the power of heaven is? No Mephisto on the hell side will never believe that the power of heaven will be harmonious. Integrate with other forces. Precisely because they are the enemies of heaven, they are also the group that best understands the power of heaven. The sacred attributes of heaven have a powerful restraint effect on evil. Many people think of it as a superior subordinate relationship in terms of attributes. However, in fact, for this kind of the Mephistos have never really recognized the dimension on the hell side. True. God's authority does stipulate that the power on the hell side will be limited to a certain extent by the power on the heaven side, but this restriction is not as exaggerated as many people understand. The reason why the world sees the scene is that once the power of heaven appears, the power of evil has nowhere to hide. In fact, it is entirely because the power of heaven is extremely exclusive. The so-called sacredness that cannot be invaded is actually a kind of nature of being the only God. Apart from me, there is no other God, and I will not allow any force to offend my authority. Therefore, strictly speaking, the power of heaven is to restrain all other laws and powers. As long as the power is not as good as the power of heaven, it will be destroyed by the power of heaven. The reason why the power on the hell side is so restrained that it has nowhere to hide is because the power on the hell side is particularly conspicuous in front of the power of heaven due to God's restrictions. Naturally, it will be attacked by heaven. The rejection reaction will be more severe. It directly has the effect of having nowhere to hide, and will be directly eliminated or expelled back to hell. No life knows the power of heaven better than the Mephistos and demons on the hell side. This is a symbol of hegemony. However, precisely because he understood the nature of the power of heaven, the tentacle monster showed such an unbelievable attitude after seeing how easily Chu Mu integrated the sacred power of heaven with Chu Mu's own divine power. He could not understand how the power of heaven, which is always the Tao, can be so easy to talk to. Was Chu Mu's divine power higher than the heaven's power, so the heaven's power was forced to integrate? The tentacle monster didn't believe this ridiculous speculation at all. To know the tools, he knew very well that the strange God in front of him was just a being from the level single universe. This level of life. How can the power of control be higher than that of heaven? Not to mention that level single universe can't do it, even multi-universe level beings don't have that ability. Moreover, in the perception of tentacle monsters, the sacred power of heaven perfectly integrates with Chu Mu's divine power. The tentacle monsters all want to use the word Qian Nuahao to describe Chu Mu's state of divine power. She is like a girl who has no resistance at all. If it weren't for experiencing the power of Chu Mu's use of sacred power to continuously destroy this dimensional projection world, which is indeed the sacred power that only belongs to heaven, the tentacle monster would never believe what he saw. Geely is actually willing to take the initiative to cooperate and integrate into other Liwangs? This is simply damn fake. It's not long before tentacle monsters integrate into human society. Therefore, he also learned some language usage habits of human society. No, under extreme disbelief, the tentacle monster couldn't help but make a guest appearance as the Majafake monster. No way. Although the main body is a top-dimensional Mephisto that spans the multi-universe and is also famous in the hellside, the tentacle monster also has vast knowledge as a duplication. But precisely because he is well-informed and has a deep understanding of heaven, the tentacle monster will act like this after seeing Chu Mu put an unmade shell on the glorious wings of Washi. He bet. That's when the true body comes. Probably people couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. The power of heaven actively cooperates with other forces to become a wage earner? She is as obedient as a shy girl. Is this still the power of heaven that I am familiar with? Is this still the overbearing divine power that cannot tolerate anything else? There's something wrong with me. Or, are the changes in the world too ridiculous? The tentacle monsters were a little bit doubtful whether they were dreaming. Even though the luster of Chu Emu's everlasting wings of light illuminated the entire dimensional projection world, it was riddled with holes, but the tentacle monsters still couldn't recover. They just felt, I am afraid that I have fallen into an extremely advanced illusion. What a joke. What's your level? Can the power of heaven be so coordinated? What on earth did you do? Why? The power of heaven will cooperate with you so much. The tentacle monster really couldn't figure out how Chu Mu did all this. Even if Chu Mu is really a big angel, it is absolutely impossible for him to have the ability to integrate like this. A big angel can only use the power of heaven unscrupulously. Even the strongest fighting angel can only use itself as a carrier of the power of heaven, and does not have the authority to truly control the power of heaven. This is also the reason why Angel will fall from heaven after being deprived of his personality, and can no longer use any power of heaven. They just have permission to use the power of heaven, even if as a big angel, it's just that the big angel has higher permissions than other angels. You're not a big angel, now. The tentacle monster finally reacted.
How to say? He was sure. If Chu Mu is really a great angel, it is absolutely impossible for Chu Mu to integrate the power of heaven with other powers. For those angels who control the power of heaven, the holy light is the most supreme power and also him. Feedback from their faith.
Therefore, even if they really found a way to integrate the power of heaven with other powers, they would not be able to commit such an act of blasphemy against the sacred power. The more the tentacle monster thought about it, the more magical it became. Tex. Yet able to use the power of heaven so unscrupulously. And he can also do things that even the big angels can't do. So, who is the strange god in front of me? God's illegitimate son. I never said that I am some kind of big angel. It's always you who thinks you are. Chu Mu stared at the ever-broken sky in a blaze of glory. The entire dimension projects the world. It is constantly disintegrating under the illumination of billions of glorious wings. A whole world is shattered. Even the desolate purgatory. This process of fragmentation has a unique sense of beauty, especially in the picture of countless shining particles floating in the dark and gloomy world. What the tentacle monster pulled out was a dimensional projection. But, in fact, it can also be regarded as a world, but an incomplete world, just like the tentacle monster originally, which is just a part separated from a real world. In fantasy novels, it might be called the small world inside the body of a cultivator. In any case, it also has many real laws and powers. And now, in front of billions of glorious wings equipped with the power of made in heaven, the whole world is rapidly destroying. It's like a large piece of foam has been corroded by strong sulfuric acid. Chu Mu doesn't even need to use the power of billions of radiant wings to travel across the universe. This space. In front of the billions of glorious wings blessed by the sacred power, even the reinforcements with the origin of the tentacle monsters are still melting at an extremely fast speed. King of Hell. Now. Do you know why I'm not worried at all? Chu Mu looked indifferent. The divinity in his eyes kept shining, and he could clearly see the tentacle monster integrated into the entire dimensional projection world, following him. Along with this dimension is constantly disintegrated and dissolved. At this rate, we can't even wait for the reaction of the cosmic consciousness. How should I put it? Chu Mu wants to complain about this. The reaction of the cosmic consciousness in the Marvel universe is really too slow. No wonder Mephistos from many dimensions are able to find loopholes and sneak into the Marvel universe. It is estimated that the cosmic consciousness of this Marvel universe is as rigid and slow as the retarded artificial intelligence of 1,000 degrees of search. My dimension. The essence of my existence. No. How can you do all this? You are just a humble and ordinary indigenous god. At this time, the tentacle monster finally reacted. His voice was still filled with extreme disbelief, but it was more about the uncontrollable fear and uneasiness in his heart after he became aware of his situation. Obviously, he saw it too. Chu Mu really can't be trapped in this dimensional projection world. It seems that you also have some problems with your eyes. Have you considered wearing a pair of glasses? Why do you think I am as ordinary as you? Chu Mu is definitely confident. He still has other trump cards that are useless. The Almighty Eye has given Chu Mu so many identities, which means it has given Chu Mu countless details. If you really want to count, the tentacle monster is really much more common than the forbidden animal. It's just a duplication of Mephisto in one dimension. Although this guy's body should be very strong, in terms of duplication alone, the method is a bit simple. Definitely. This must have a lot to do with the tentacle monster's remaining health. However, the lower the health, the more trump cards it should have. Chu Mu was very disappointed that the tentacle monster was reduced to incompetent rage so quickly. The more cards you have. Damn it. Are you provoking me? You have no idea how powerful I am. You used some despicable means. Do you really think you are qualified to provoke an ancient god like me? My true body will avenge me. Good guy. If you disagree, you will use your parents to threaten you. This kind of style. It's really like the kind of second-generation people who do bad things and don't allow others to punish them. Once the retribution comes to them, they immediately start shouting that my dad is XXX and who dares to understand me. Don't even mention it. Don't look at devils, demons, and gods. Their life levels are much higher than human beings, but their essences in this aspect are surprisingly consistent for some reason. The tentacle monster is really nothing but impotent rage. He has no trump card. Although the tentacle monster really wants to explode and let Chu Mu know how powerful he is, it is a pity that he has even sacrificed his own origin, so how can he still have the means to be defeated? You won't have the last laugh. As soon as I die, my true body will find out immediately. At that time, he will send another duplication in its heyday. You will know how terrible we are. The tentacle monster is constantly roaring, and his face formed in this dimensional projection world has also become riddled with holes due to the illumination of Chu Mu's billions of glorious wings. In fact, he was so angry, so annoyed, constantly yelling and saying harsh words, not only because of the unwillingness and hatred in his heart, but also because he was trying to cover up his inner uneasiness. He could not successfully pull the strange god in front of him to die together, which meant that the other party would still hold the ownership of the gate of heaven and leave his prison. Relying on this guy's use of the holy light, the tentacle monster is worried that his body may not be able to catch up with the time to seize the ownership of the gate of heaven. According to common sense, if you don't get the secret, don't know the truth about the fall of heaven, and don't get the way to become a new god, it's basically impossible to truly gain ownership of heaven and become a new god. Therefore, what tentacle monsters need to guard against should never be life on this earth. He only needs to let the ontology know the secret dimension Mephisto before discovering the gate of heaven in this universe, and let his ontology obtain the gate of heaven to ensure that the ontology becomes the new god. However, the current situation, the tentacle monster is not sure whether it can still think in accordance with common sense. The main reason is that the Earth's indigenous god he encountered is too evil. He is not afraid of death. He was just worried that his chance to become a new god would be cut off. Being able to use the power of heaven so contrary to common sense, he was not sure whether the guy in front of him knew about the invisible part. This is why the tentacle monster is becoming more and more uneasy. If the guy in front of him steals God's authority, then his own body will probably suffer the same fate as himself. Once the body dies, he really will never have a chance to be resurrected. I will never allow that to happen. Just like beast's desperate pounce before dying, seeing that its own origin was also riddled with holes, the tentacle monster roared and gathered its remaining power to keep Chu Mu. Even if it just makes Chu Mu comatose for a while. As long as he waits until the cosmic consciousness of this universe comes down to judge, then he doesn't have to worry about his body losing the chance to become a new god. Damn it. Why does this cosmic consciousness move so slowly? The tentacle monster also started to complain. Carrying the remaining power, he gathered the remaining darkness of the entire purgatory, stirred up an extremely powerful wave, and rushed towards Chu Mu with death-like determination. Sorry, I have lost interest in playing games with you. Chu Mu raised her hand and looked at the back of her hand. The tattoo of the gate of heaven, at the moment, was like breathing, lighting up and then extinguishing rhythmically. That is the movement that is constantly transforming divine power. This farce should end. The words fell. Facing the overwhelming darkness and the searching and squeezing of the entire purgatory space, Chu Mu poured all the divine power in her body into the gate of heaven. Then, the conversion efficiency of heaven's gate has been greatly improved. The divine power that was exaggerated with divine power flowed to him again. The wings formed by billions of rays of light burst out with unprecedented dazzling light. The whole purgatory, covered by the dazzling yet gentle holy light. Like a pair of extremely sharp swords, purgatory was shattered, and countless rays of light penetrated the dimensional barrier. The cage that was supposed to be unbreakable shattered like an eggshell.